Welcome back to session 2 of I'll Have It God's Way. In chapter 1, we talk about focusing your heart and mind on heaven. How do we walk this out? How do we focus on the eternal when we have to make a living, care for a loved one, face difficulties in our own life? This study is all about closing the gap between here and heaven, and learning from others is a good place to start. Hebrews 11 reads like the who's who of the Bible, and it's very important to our discussion. This chapter is where we are reminded of the ancient faithful, including Abraham, Sarah, Joseph, Isaac, Moses, and many others who shared one life-changing thing in common. They lived their lives faithfully, not based on what they could see, but according to the promises of the God in whom they believed. In verse 9, it says Abraham lived as a stranger in a foreign country, and he lived in tents, though he was extremely wealthy and could have had any kind of home he wanted. Then verse 10 says that Abraham was confidently looking forward to the city with eternal foundations, a city designed and built by God. Romans 4:16 says that Abraham, the man who lived most of his life in tents, is the father of all who believe. Can we follow him and focus less on our broken world and cast our hearts ahead to the magnificence that God has planned for our future? Let's join Peter when he says, "We are looking forward to a new heaven and a new earth, the home of righteousness." Yes, we can all look forward to a new and glorified body in a new and glorified world. For now, we'll return to Tampa.
So let's move to step 2. Step 2 to a peaceful death is understand the limits of medicine. Just like teenagers, we want what we want and we won't be denied. We want more stuff, more doing, more achieving, more attention to ourselves, more power, more control over others, and more medicine. We're addicted to our medicalized lives. Many people believe if they find the right doctor or the right hospital, they can just avoid death altogether. Well, if death is an option, don't you think the powerful and wealthy would just opt out? Don't you think Jackie Collins, with a reported net worth of $100 million, could have just bought a cure if one existed? In 1955, President Eisenhower had a heart attack, and his doctors told him he had to give up his 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Eisenhower also had to give up bacon and eggs because a new theory had emerged that animal fat kills us. The man who led the forces that turned the tide to defeat Hitler was now eating Melba toast and grapefruit. Well, guess what? 2015 guidelines rescinded the warning that eating animal fat kills us. So I say, pass the bacon, right? Yeah. We like to believe that medical advice is always right, but it can't be. When George Burns was 90, he was asked, "Well, what do the doctors tell you about smoking all those cigars every day?" Burns replied, "They said it was going to kill me." Well, what are they saying now? Nothing. They're all dead. Many doctors share the opinion that we're machines and our parts wear out, and eventually key parts like heart, lung, kidneys just wear out, then we die. And maybe that's true, but that was so last century. Today, I can get a heart transplant, a lung or kidney transplant. Just like we depend on restaurants for cooking and schools for educating children, we now depend upon medicine to save us. No worries, there's always a new drug and a more sophisticated innovation to try. In our culture, we don't see death happening around us in the natural flow. What most of us see is Hollywood death. I mean, this is murder in the shower. And then the next day, the actress is on talk shows promoting the film. This allows us to keep death at a distance. So when we become seriously ill, we go to the place that will save us for sure, hospitals. Hospitals have been called the modern equivalent of great cathedrals because they're the place we go to worship our one true evidence-based religion, medicine. My friend, Dr. Richard De La Pena, told me so much so that physicians tease about the letters MD. He said, "Hattie, didn't you know that MD means medical deity?" The machinery of healthcare defines our wellness for us and proposes solutions to problems we didn't even know we had. It sets up the illusion that it can fix whatever ails us and kick us right back into the game forever. One day in 2003, 8,010,000 women had osteoporosis. Then the next day, literally the next day, 14,791,000 women had it. What's going on? Pharmaceutical companies redefined wellness. You can see the effect of lower diagnostic thresholds on osteoporosis, diabetes, high blood pressure, and high cholesterol. By changing the targets or the definition of sick, millions more of us are told we're sick and we need drugs. Now, don't get me wrong, this can be good. A lot of people are helped. This can be why we're living a little bit longer than our grandmothers. When you couple new disease targets with $5.4 billion in annual spending on direct-to-consumer advertising by drug companies, we all end up spending $425 billion buying what they told us to buy for diseases that the commercials say we must have. It's hard to accept the limits of medicine when everywhere we turn, we're given evidence of the magical power of pills. So what can you do? One simple thing you can do is bring a healthy dose of skepticism to the drug advertising you see every day. Studies are available online, and you can find out who funded them. Are studies funded by the sugary beverage industry less likely to find that sugary beverages contribute to diabetes? Well, of course. Not only does this advertising increase our consumption of medicine, it turns us into what doctors call the worried well. Newspapers, television, magazines, and the internet are packed full of news about healthcare, and this heightens our awareness, and the advertising is so compelling. We are buying every pill, patch, treatment, and promise the product makers of modern medicine can dream up. And the dreaming started with a man named Henry Gadsden. He was the CEO of Merck from 1965 to 1975. He didn't want us to only take his pills when we were sick. He wanted us to take his pills when we're healthy too. We've been seduced into the false hopes of long eyelashes, flawless skin, perfect health, all propped up by Madison Avenue. Remember, we're teenagers inside and we're wishing and hoping. And the wishing and hoping keeps us in denial of aging and death. We're wishing and hoping that medicine can save us from our 21st century habits of sugar and sitting and stress and the recent uptick of drug, alcohol, and food addiction. We're wishing and hoping medicine can and will preserve and protect us. And while we wish and hope for someone else to fix us, we miss the opportunity to grow wise, to face truth and fear with knowledge and love. We're depending on something physical to work on our souls and spirits. So we're on the wrong road to freedom and peace. No matter what the ads say, no matter what we've seen cured in our lifetimes, there is an end to the miracles. So again, step 2 is understand the limits of medicine, to recognize that it could be ineffective and could worsen rather than help your condition, and in the end is always way too small up against the force of nature. Yes, our $3 trillion medical industrial complex is way too small up against the force of nature. Life is still full of mysteries, and we can't expect medicine to solve every problem. So now you know the first 2 steps to getting the freedom and peace that comes with having it your way. Up next, I'll share the simple thing you can do to claim the power that's rightfully yours when you or someone you love is faced with a life-threatening crisis. We'll be right back.